Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Friday Night Live. I know, sorry we missed last week, but I'll tell you what, we've been out and about traveling all over Australia looking for the next best opportunity. So hence, on this one, I'm flying solo. My colleagues, Sean and Mark, are actually out there making things happen for our clients. So I thought, we've got to be consistent, we can't let our audience down, and we should deliver some value today. So welcome to another episode of Friday Night Live. If you and I haven't met before, my name is Kesh, and I teach people how to invest in real estate. Now normally, we would be in a very different format, and I love the green lights. This is where Sean normally sits, with the green lights. I love it. Green for money. Now, we discuss all sorts of things on Friday Night Live, sometimes about the market, sometimes about investing, sometimes about mindset. So today, I thought we'll keep it short and sharp. So producer Ryan actually said to me, he said, hey, can we do some tools for our clients? Can we share some free tools that people could use on their own to do research, to work out their numbers, to do all sorts of stuff? So I'm like, yes. That is a great idea. So today's episode is not going to be me waffling on about all sorts of things in the world. We're going to keep it short and sharp. And today I'm going to share some incredible tools with you. Now, there's going to be two parts to this tool. Now, again, producer Ryan has told me I got to keep it under 20 minutes. So I'm going to try my best. But these tools, part one of these tools is numbers based. So how do you calculate your numbers? What tools do you need to calculate your numbers, and how to work it all out? The second part of your tools is sort of a free research tool. Websites you can go to, understand vacancy rates, look at asking prices, so on and so forth. So, without further delay, we're going to take your attention to my screen. It is the tool. So, without further ado, let's get into the tools. So, there's a really good website that I love to use. It is called moneysmart.gov.au. Now, this is something that I use constantly a lot in my life because it's an amazing free tool that, the government provides us, right? The first tool I really like to use in this is the budget planner. So when you go to MoneySmart, you can go on the right side here and you can click there and you can even look for it. So I can literally go here and I can go, it came up as one of my suggested, but you could type in budget planner, you get the idea. Now, why do I use a budget planner? A lot of people think budgeting is annoying and it can be frustrating and so on and so forth. I like to know where my money goes because I like to do fun things. So I have a budget for everything. So I know what is my going up money, my investment money, my car money, holiday money, whatever it is. And yeah, you can have cool Excel sheets and make it super complicated. What I like to do is go in here and really put in your numbers. So what is your take-home pay? What is your partner's take-home pay? Any bonus, overtime, any of that sort of stuff? Home utilities, internet, pay TV, and it really makes you think, right? So as you complete it, in the end, you will get a really, really nice summary that'll show you. I do one every quarter just to see how I'm tracking. And the way I do a budget is slightly different to normal people. So normally people will put in what they are actually spending. I do two budgets every quarter. So one, what I'm actually doing and what I'd like to do, and see what I'd like to do, how I can add it to my budget and move money around from here and there, right? And as you make more and more money, you might be able to include everything and not have to do two budgets, right? The other tool I like to use from the same website, so let me just pair them together, is the income tax calculator. So I was just testing this out earlier. So this is financial year 2022 to 2023. So you can put in your household income, your individual income of say $200,000, and it'll sort of give you a rough breakdown. So if you were earning $200,000, your income tax payable would be about $60,667. Medicare levy payable is $4,000, so on and so forth. So this gives you a really good understanding. Now, for those of you who are paying this sort of tax, that is horrible. Investing can be a great way to bring some tax back. And there's cash and non-cash deductions, but we'll do a whole different video for that. So the income tax calculator, the budget planner, this website, going back to the beginning, my search, also has a mortgage calculator, right? How much will my repayments be? So if I'm looking at a property owner-occupier investment, if I'm going principal and interest or interest only, I can go and say, let's assume I borrow $950,000, and let's say my interest is 5%, and monthly frequency or fortnightly, and let's say my loan term is 30 years. So I can actually see here what my repayments are going to be. So this is telling me if I borrow $950,000 at 5% per annum and make a monthly repayment, pay my mortgage monthly for a 30-year period, we can even make that fee 0 if you want, I would be paying about $5,100 a year. And out of this, I would have paid back $950,000, that's a principal amount, but it'll also tell you the amount of interest you would have paid back. So you would have paid $885,000. Again, this is a really good lesson for people who are owner-occupiers where, often I hear the argument where people say, hey, I'd rather be paying my mortgage than paying rent. I understand that, where that sentiment comes from. You want a place called home. But you also got to understand with your mortgage comes interest, and this interest is paid as a fee to the bank. So if this same property was an investment property, every dollar in interest paid could have been claimed back, but that's for another video. Now, if you were to compare this with another mortgage, say I was getting a better deal somewhere else, and I said, right, this bank is offering me 5%, and let's say I borrowed another $950,000, but another bank was offering me 4.65%. Let's say that. Now I can see what that is going to look like for me in terms of repayments and so on and so forth, right? So the difference between them. And you can fool around with it. There's interest only, there's principal and interest, so on and so forth. This website is pretty cool. Loans, credit, investing, debt, personal loans, personal loan calculator, payday loans, car loan calculator, going guarantor on a loan. It's got lots and lots of information. So if you want to learn stuff, it is a great free tool for you guys to learn a lot about understanding how to use your super. It's awesome. Great place to start from. Now, as an investor, something that we really need to know is numbers. So the numbers that we want to understand is how much money do I really need to buy a property? Now, of course, there's a component of having deposits and having so on and so forth, various things. But apart from the deposit, say I'm buying a $500,000 property or $1 million property. Let's say $1 million property, and I'm putting down a 12% deposit, so that would be $120,000. What I need to work out is, apart from my initial deposit, what all are my expenses? So if I can get producer Ryan, first thing when we're doing, and we can do this in an animation if we will, the first thing we need to do when as an investor is go, right, I need to pay a deposit. So let's say I'm paying 12% deposit, we can put it up here somewhere. And then I need to pay a solicitor to review my contract. So maybe I'm paying the solicitor $2,000. The third thing I need is maybe some money for due diligence. So maybe if you're buying an existing property for pest and building and various reports. Fourth thing I need is, if I'm paying less than a 20% deposit, I need to pay LMI. So going back to my example of buying $1 million home and putting down a 12% deposit, I want to know what my LMI might look like. Now, yes, some people might multiply it by 1.7 or 2.1%, but lender's mortgage insurance is pretty complicated, like car insurance. Depends on where you park it, what sort of suburb it is, so on and so forth, right? A really good place to go is genworth.com.au. So these guys are someone who actually are LMI providers. So if we go LMI fee estimator, and again, guys, if you're working with a good broker, they will do all of this for you. This might not be 100% accurate to the LMI you're going to receive. It's very subjective to the type of deal and location and so on and so forth. But let's just say, to get a rough understanding, I say I put down $1 million. I'm buying a property for $1 million and I put down a 12% deposit. That's $120,000. And my first home buyer, no, loan term, let's say up to 30 years. Let's say it's an investment, no. Because lender's mortgage insurance is a tax deductible expense as an investor. So let's just say on a property like this, I need the $120,000 deposit. I need the $2,000 for the solicitor, maybe $2,000 for pest and building, and I need the $18,000 in LMI. So now it's starting all to add up. Now, the other thing we need for this property is stamp duty. So I might go here to stampdutycal.com.au, right? And I might go, right, I'm buying $1 million property in, let's say, Victoria, for example, and let's say it's my investment and it is an established home. In this case, you'll see it'll tell you your approximate stamp duty, your transfer fees. Again, guys, this is a generalized number. It might be slightly different from reality. It depends on when they update the website, but it'll give you a very, very close estimate of what to expect while buying a property, right? A really, really good way to really estimate when you're buying a property. Now, the same $1 million property, if you wanted to fool around and be like, hey, what if I was smarter and I wanted to save on stamp duty, and I said, how about if I bought land and built the house? So let's say the house, costs $500,000 to build and the land costs $500,000. So what you would do is you go, hey, on $500,000 in New South Wales, if I bought an investment but it was just a vacant land, and I calculate, instead of paying almost 60 grand, I would end up paying about $17,000. So you've cut your stamp duty significantly because, again, if you buy land and construct a property on it, you only end up paying stamp duty on the land. Versus if you buy a fully completed home, whether it's a new home or an established home, let me just put it in here, $1 million, and we wouldn't calculate, you're almost paying about 40 grand, give or take, right? As an example. But again, great resource to have. Now, the other thing that I'm, as an investor, see, again, if you're owner-occupier, you needn't worry about this sort of stuff, but as an investor, I want to know depreciation. Now, there are two types of deductions as an investor that you get on a property. One are cash deductions and one are non-cash deductions. The non-cash deductions are depreciation on building, fixtures, and fittings. Now, if I was buying a property, let's just say a standard house, residential, medium, 180 square meters, not squares, that'll be massive. Let's say estimated year of construction is 2022, estimated year of purchase is 2022. Was the property purchased new? That means I'm the first owner for the property and my marginal tax rate is 37. Now, for those of you going, I don't know what my tax rate is, use the income tax calculator. It'll tell you. So if I put in $350,000 and calculate, I can see my marginal tax rate is 45%, right? And if you're earning, say, $120,000, that's your marginal tax rate is 32.5%, so on and so forth, right? So you can change that up here if you like. So let's say this is a place I can go. So it's bmtqs.com.au, and you can get a BMT tax depreciation calculator. Standard house, you can choose, there are a few options. So there's townhouses, architecturally designed houses, office development, whatever it is. Let's say we're doing houses. Yep, estimated year of construction, 2022. Let's say I built the property, estimated year of purchase, say 2022. Was the property purchased brand new? Yes, and I calculate. It'll give me a rough guesstimate of how much depreciation I could get for a property like this. Now again, this is a close approximation, guys. When you do buy an investment property, it is always good to go to a BMT or a geotax. These are guys who do depreciation schedules. This is basically what you can claim against your income in tax, right? So you can go to the ATO and go, hey, wait. This is a deduction for me. Most people are trying to get, the dry cleaning bills and petrol bills and, all sorts of little nitty bitties when it comes to, I don't even think a PAYG you can claim petrol bills. But this is a bonus. Now, imagine if this property was older. So a minimum depreciation you're looking at is about $13,800, maximum about $18,300. Again, depends on finishes, fixtures, so on and so forth. And this is giving you an estimate of, over 5 years, you can claim about $77,500. Now, like I said, there's two types of depreciation. There's capital works, that's on the building, and there's plant and equipment, which is fixtures and fittings. Which reduces. Capital works, which is building, will remain consistent. It's 2.5% of the value of the property per se. Now, if this property year of construction, let's just say, was 2019, and I calculate, you can see here my depreciation has become less than half because my plant and equipment has become zero. So I've literally lost out. So on this sort of property, I'm looking at about $45,000 in deductions, right? And if this same property was purchased brand new and I was the primary owner, I'm looking at about $77,000 $8,500 in deduction. So again, if you're the first owner of the property, no one's owned it before, whether you've constructed it or you bought brand new, it's directly from the builder or the developer, you're the first owner, you get more back in depreciation. So you're someone who's making a fairly reasonable amount of money and tax is your priority, depreciation is a great friend. And if you want to know the difference, BMT Tax Depreciation Calculator is a really, really cool tool to use. Now, going into the second part of the video, where we want to talk a little bit more around research. So a lot of people go around the 15,000 plus suburbs to look at, and something that is very, very important to me is, I didn't load it up, ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics, suburbs and localities. Where is the census data? No, I'm gonna go back. The census just recently happened. There we go. So this is something I really, really like to view because this gives me a lot of understanding of where I'm buying. So let's say the year is 2021 because that's when the census last happened. And let's say I put in, I don't know, producer Ryan, what's our postcode? Up here.
2150.
2150. So let's put that in here. No. Or let me just type in our office, Sydney Parramatta. There we go. All persons. This is great. Now this is giving me a little bit of insights into Parramatta, and this is directly from the government, right? Now, when you're looking for data, look, real estate is only worth what one is willing to pay for. And automatically, if you have high levels of education in a suburb, lower levels of debt, or the debt is less than 30 or 40% of household income, the default rate and so on and so forth, things might change. So often the news has this big blanket way of just looking at things and going, right, everything's going rubbish, everything is going up in value. That's not true. So for example, there was a very good example of, say, Harris Park units versus, buying a property in Brisbane. So you could have bought a unit in Harris Park for $600,000, or you could have bought in a nice suburb in Brisbane for $600,000. Most of Harris Park units through the COVID boom actually went backwards in value, while the Brisbane units Brisbane houses, for the same $600,000 purchase price went up 40-50% even in some pockets. So you could have made a better call, right? But those calls happen because of people. So this is a really good website which will tell you. So the amount of people living in Parramatta is about 493,000 people. Male 51, female 49, median age is 34, right? We can see average number of people per household, 2.8. So we can see there's smaller households. Median weekly household income is $1,828 per week. Median monthly mortgage repayments are $2,200. Median weekly rent is $430. Now, these are medians. They're considered the newer ones, the older ones, the derelict ones that no one's living. All of those sort of things are considered. You can look at a lot of things, whether people are married, separated, divorced, widowed, never married, all sorts of fun stuff. Cultural diversity. So we can see 15.8% people come from a Chinese background, 12.4% from an Australian, 11.7% English, 9.3% Indian, 8.6% Lebanese. Countries of birth, top responses. Now, these are people, so India, China, Lebanon, Nepal, Korea. So we can see it's pretty diverse over here. Both parents were born overseas. Wow. So 70.4% of people who live in Parramatta, both parents were born overseas. That is very interesting. I never knew that. Father only born overseas. That's 4.7. Mother only born. Both parents born in Australia. 14.9. Parramatta is like a little melting pot of culture. People from all over the world. Country of birth of father, top state of responses, Australia, India, China, Lebanon, Korea. Pretty interesting. Religious affiliation, income and work. So we can see here, so this is a really, really cool comparison, right? So if you look at Parramatta in general, personal income for someone, weekly income is about $741 versus New South Wales is $813 and Australia is $805. So what that is telling me, the median weekly income for people in Parramatta is below the New South Wales average and Australia's average. But the family household incomes are sort of in line with New South Wales average and Australia average. Household incomes are about the same with New South Wales, 1828, 1829, and Australia 1704. So I can see that, are we going to see a massive competition with wealthier people pushing in and competing to push up prices in Parramatta? Maybe not. Likelihood is Parramatta in the foreseeable future, looking at the data, is going to be a huge influx, a huge melting pot for first generation immigrants to come in, set up shop, start life here, and then probably find their way in other places, right? And I'm sure that would reflect in the way Parramatta units would have performed over the last boom versus, say, a Oran Park or a Box Hill or some other suburb, which was a little bit further out because of demographics. Did unpaid domestic work? 55.8%. Now, producer Ryan, would you think that did unpaid domestic work? I'm assuming this means working at home, doing your chores. If I'm not wrong, but let's just say if that was 3% and people had a lot of help, a cleaner, had all of that, I would reckon their household income would automatically be higher and the capital growth and the median house price would be through. So if you're doing too much household work, maybe not a good place to buy. I only joke. But it's got really, really cool, interesting stuff. So we can see health-wise what we're looking at: arthritis, asthma, cancer, dementia. So there's 0.6% of the population. So someone seems very, very lost in Parramatta. They could be either on drugs or dementia. I shouldn't make fun of it. But this is really, really cool to see what sort of demographics are there. Now, I use a lot of this to really understand what sort of, if I'm looking at a suburb and I really like that suburb and the performance of the suburb for various reasons, I really try and look at what sort of product, like, you got to think like a hotelier in this industry, right? So what sort of product do you want to create? I don't want to overcapitalize, undercapitalize. So having a very dodgy sort of build in a more affluent suburb is a very silly thing to do, and having, the Taj Mahal of a property in a more derelict or, a more low socio suburb does not make sense. So couples, family without children, 31.4%. Couples, family with children, 51.2%. So again, if I was looking at this suburb particularly, and even if I was looking at the apartment market, I'd see if there are amenities, if there's a park close by, are there enough childcare centres, like, how occupied are these places? And because couples with family with children, this is what's going to be important to them, right? And especially, you can even go up there and look at the average age of kids and so on and so forth. Moving down, further around, family households, composition, Wow, so this is pretty cool. So tenure type, 22.2% people living in Parramatta own their house outright, and 29.7% people own it with a mortgage, right? 44.6%, there's a huge population here that is renting within the region. Household income less than 650, 15.9%, more than 3,000. Median rent paid. Renters household where rent payments are less or equal to 30% of household income, 57.7. So again, I would like this to be slightly higher. Renters household income where rent payments get greater. So again, in markets where the rental household income, where rent payments are greater than 30% household income, can tell me that the default rate of someone paying rent in this region might be a little bit more. Again, median mortgage repayments are so and so. Owners with mortgage households where repayments are less, that's 64.9%, which is a really good number. I always like to see that at close to 65 or above. Owners with mortgage households with mortgage repayments more, 24.3%. So this just tells me that, you know, the mortgage default rate here would not be significant. If it was the other way around, it would be pretty crazy. I would stay miles away, if you will. And various things, but it's a really good tool. You can do any suburb you like. We can even do 2155. Is it? What's South? No, that's Kellyville. Let's look at Kellyville. All persons here. Damn, look at 75,699. Right, people, very similar. Let's look at household income. Let's just see what Kellyville's pretty diverse as well. We've got Mandarin, Hindi, Punjabi. That's pretty cool. You can see weekly median income is $300 more than Parramatta, right? 72.9% people did domestic. I gotta get to the bottom of it. I need to understand what this really means. I'm very curious. If any of you know what it is, unpaid assistance to a person with disability, unpaid domestic work. Oh, they've got a little click thing. I'm not gonna digress. Those of you who are interested, you can go through that. Arthritis, dementia as well. Arthritis. I reckon pharmaceutical companies go through this and go, right, this is what we've got to have a price line over there. Well, look at this. Private dwellings. What? So look at this. Couples without children, 24. So predominantly it's couples with children, one parent families, and other. And dwelling count. Occupied private dwellings, 95.6%. So I would automatically assume unoccupied private dwellings is 4.4. And if I go on to SQM and if I go, I'm going to come back to this. I'm just testing something out with you guys. If I go 2155, let's see if it works. Yes, the vacancy rate's under 3%. God damn, it all comes together. So yeah, so you can see really that there's barely any. And a lot of these unoccupied properties could also mean, they're done on purpose. We can do a deeper dive. Personal income, $1,100 versus, mate, that is very good. A lot of people, when they look at this data, they think, oh, it's only $300, but it makes a massive difference to the large, and this is median, right? So there'll be a lot more people above that. Families, wow. Households, wow. Not surprised, real estate did really well in this suburb. Separated houses, 82.1%, so predominantly independent houses, semi-detached, row, terrace, 6.8, flats, apartments, 4 or more bedrooms, 76%, which makes sense because it's predominantly a family-oriented, like a family suburb, so people need space, especially post-COVID. Now, this is very interesting. Like, North Kellyville is a relatively new suburb, right? It's sort of developed over the last decade, maybe less than the last decade. And owned outright is about 19.6. When I mean developed, it always existed, didn't drop from middle of nowhere. I mean the whole subdivision, the new estates coming through, the new properties coming through. 19.6% people own it outright, which is not bad for a new suburb. Owned with a mortgage, 53.6%, 24.8% rented. So again, I really like, for capital growth, having pockets which have more number of owner-occupiers, and families tend to and with a higher income, median income, tend to do a little bit better and attract a better demographic of people, pushing up prices, both rent. Median rent is $600 again. Now think about this, producer Ryan. We just looked at Parramatta, which is supposed to be the second CBD, supposed to be like close to everything, train stations, but the median rent in Parramatta is lower. The income is lower, right? Compared to North Kellyville, which doesn't have a train station, right? So what does that tell you? Demographics outperforms everything. Where do people want to live? Median mortgages are $3,000. Owners with mortgage, 71.8% people. So again, I said I'd love to see a 60% plus mark, but 71.8% of households. This is excellent. Have less than or equal to 30% of household. This is so good. Owners with mortgages with a house greater 18%, unable to determine. This is really good. Again, I look at 65% plus, ideally, when I'm looking at properties. But you get the gist. I'm not going to waste time going through this sort of stuff. Another really good, cool website is Microbubs. So you can go in here and go Parramatta, if I can spell today. And Microbubs is a free tool which will give you a little bit of an insight. I like to use the Australian Bureau of Statistics more than Microbubs because sometimes I have stuff wrong, but you've got everything. You can see, planning applications, who's doing what, installing signage, whatever council requests have gone in, future developments. You can look at a HIP score. So we've got uni students, creative degrees, single men, single women, diversity, body piercing, health foods, all of that sort of stuff. Family score, 9 out of 10, which is great. Safety score, 3 out of 10. Not very good. Dangerous place. Oh my God, it's all red. So alcohol-related assault. So there's no very low, there's low to high. Break and enter, man, depressing. But again, not making a gross generalization, but usually lower incomes, less professionals, diverse backgrounds, unable to assimilate, creates more frustration in society, leads to crime, so on and so forth. Lifestyle score, convenience score. 41% of workers use public transport. Excellent. Tranquility. Communication score, so you got good internet, not a problem. Community score, so we've got lots of stuff. Places of worship, local government buildings. Yeah. So this is a really cool thing. I even look at the walk score. So if I went Parramatta again, walk score is a really cool website. 81 walk score is great. Parramatta is the 76th most walkable neighborhood in Sydney. A greater the walk score, the better the sort of locality is, especially if you're looking at a younger demographic. So often people are looking to invest and they buy a property where it's not very walkable. Now, if you end up buying in a suburb where, they're predominantly young people or students but it's not a walkable neighborhood, you've bought the wrong product. Like, Parramatta needs to have, if you're buying for that sort of demographic and it's not walkable, you've just picked up the wrong unit. You know what I mean? So you've picked up the wrong type of dwelling. But for North Kellyville, even if it doesn't have the best walk score, you can see it's predominantly owner-occupied, well-established people with families. Again, there's no excuse to have a bad walk score, but having a good walk score only adds value to your property. The other great tool is SQM Research. SQM Research is an independent data company. You don't need to buy their reports and do all that sort of stuff, but they have pretty good free data here. So if I go in here and I put in 2155 like I did before, the postcode of where I'm looking at, it'll tell me what my vacancy rate is. So normally a 3% vacancy rate is a balanced market. Anything under 3% is a pretty tight market, for example. And anything above 3% you might be expecting a little bit of vacancy. So again, you can see here that the vacancy was pretty high. As properties, there was a huge influx of construction, and as dwellings get absorbed, the vacancy drops. So again, please do not just take this on face value. The idea of using these tools is to understand what's currently happening and understand why this is happening and dig a little bit further. But for today's episode, going back to this camera, the main camera here, so I can address everyone, is the main focus here is there's some great free tools for you to use to do your research on the internet without having to buy expensive reports. Now, as someone who loves real estate and wants to understand more, these tools could be a great benefit. So if you're ever considering or just want to have a look at what your suburb's doing, please use these tools. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. This was producer Ryan's idea. Give him full credit for it. Producer Ryan. And you got some value today. My name is Kesh. Thanks for watching this episode of Friday Night Live. I'll see you on the next one. It's a wrap.
Bye.